On the day of my master's graduation, my name echoed across the stadium, yet no one stood, no applause followed. The empty seats stayed cold and unmoved, just like how my family had always met my efforts with silence. 3 days later, my mother texted, "Need $2,100 for your sister's sweet 16. Not a single word of congratulations, just another demand, like always. I opened my banking app, sent exactly $1, and typed, "Congrats." Then I changed the locks. My small apartment finally felt like it truly belonged to me. But only a few hours later, there was a knock on the door. The police. They said my mother had called, worried I might harm myself. I laughed. Maybe what truly scared them was realizing I had started to protect myself. And you? Have you ever had to choose silence just to be free? Where are you watching from so I know I'm not alone? My name is Natalie Reed, and that morning, the entire stadium of the University of Colorado Denver glowed deep blue under the May sun, hundreds of graduation gowns fluttering in the light. One by one, names filled the air, each followed by a wave of clapping, cheers, whistles, the warmest sound of any student's life. But when the announcer said, "Natalie Elaine Reed, Master of Data Analytics," it was as if someone had turned off the sound completely. I walked across the stage, my heels clicking softly against the wooden floor, scanning the crowd, the same seats I knew I had mailed invitations to, texted reminders about, clung to hope for. No one came. The rows of empty chairs stood neatly among a sea of laughter and flashbulbs. I felt like a guest at a celebration I was never invited to. As I held that diploma in my hands, one thought crossed my mind. So this is the answer I've been waiting 24 years for. After the ceremony, students flooded the courtyard, posing for photos with parents, friends, bouquets, and silver balloons that shimmered in the sunlight. I stood off to the side, phone in hand, pretending to text someone just so I wouldn't have to meet anyone's pitying eyes. A classmate, Ruby, ran up and hugged me, showing off her pictures with her parents. I smiled and lied. They got stuck in traffic. But deep down, I knew they weren't stuck anywhere, they simply didn't want to be there. I left campus, driving my beat-up Honda Civic down streets lined with pale purple wisteria. The wind blew through the half-open window, carrying the sound of music from cafes around Larimer Square where people celebrated, clinked champagne glasses, and toasted to new beginnings. I stopped beside a familiar red brick wall, leaned against it, set up my small tripod, and pressed the timer. 5 seconds later, the shutter clicked. Just me, in my master's gown, forcing a smile amid strangers. No one behind the camera. No proud, "You did it." No arms around me. Only my shadow stretching long across the damp pavement, the wind lifting the corner of my diploma. I sent the photo to my mom with a short message. I graduated. 2 hours passed. No reply. No, congrats. No emoji, not even a period. When I got home, I took off the cap, hung the gown by the door, and looked into the mirror at the tired face I barely recognized. And in that reflection, the memories started flooding back. I started working when I was 16. While my friends spent their summers at the beach or in camps, I was wearing a brown Starbucks apron at the corner of Main Street, clocking in for the 5:30 a.m. shift. The weekly paycheck wasn't much, just enough to buy secondhand textbooks, fill up my 2006 Honda Civic that was nearly at 200,000 miles, and send the rest home because Mom said, "Avery needs Spanish lessons, or she'll fall behind her classmates." I remember the first time I transferred money online, Mom texted back right away, "Thank you, sweetheart. You're truly my pride." Those words made me forget how tired I was. I thought that was love. Looking back now, it was just the first transaction in an endless series. When I went to college in Boulder, majoring in applied mathematics, I didn't qualify for family credit aid, so I had to fill out the FAFSA myself and take out my first student loan. Mom co-signed as guarantor, but after the first semester, she called sounding heavy with worry. "Avery needs braces urgently. You're young, honey, you can work more hours. She needs confidence at her age." I sat in the library that night, the hum of the air conditioner filling the silence, and thought maybe she was right. So I picked up an overnight library shift and a part-time data entry job at a small research firm in Denver. Coffee replaced sleep, and every now and then, I'd treat myself to a stale muffin from the vending machine, a small reward for not collapsing on the keyboard. During those college years, I learned how to sew my own wallet, change a tire, and pour oil into that stubborn Civic. I also learned how to dodge questions about family when friends invited each other home for the holidays. They would share stories about moms who made the best pumpkin pie or dads who always asked about their projects. I'd just smile and say, "My family's busy." And they were mom busy running school events for Avery, dad busy staying silent. Every call home ended the same way. "Don't worry about us, just send a little something for your sister." And so, every month, I did sometimes only a few $100s, but always something. I'll never forget the spring of my senior year. I had just finished a summer internship at a data firm in Denver, hoping they'd hire me full-time. That's when Mom called, her voice strangely cheerful. "Good news, honey. We just used the college fund to buy Avery the most beautiful prom dress. You should see her, she looks stunning." My stomach sank. I gripped the phone and asked, "College fund? That's for both of us, isn't it?" She only laughed. "Oh, sweetheart, you have scholarships, you don't need it. You have to understand, prom only happens once in a lifetime." Once in a lifetime for her and once in a lifetime for me to realize that in our house, love had a credit limit. You could only withdraw it when my sister needed something. By the end of that year, I couldn't afford tuition for the next semester. I took out another loan with higher interest this time, telling myself that once I graduated and got a job, everything would be fine. I worked 2 jobs. Mornings in the university computer lab, evenings waiting tables at a Mexican restaurant in the neighborhood. On snowy nights, I'd drive the old Civic over the bridge, fingers numb on the steering wheel, my mind looping over deadlines and unpaid bills. Occasionally, Avery would text, "Hey sis, Mom said to ask if you can send a little more. I need a new coat." No greeting, no question about how I was doing, just requests, and I sent it. Not out of pity, but out of fear. Fear that if I didn't, Mom would call and say I'd made Avery feel unloved. The day I got the email announcing my acceptance into the master's program, my mother went silent for a few days before finally saying, "Well, you really are stubborn, but don't expect any help from us. I have to focus on getting Avery into college now." I smiled, not bitterly, just hollow inside. During grad school, I barely went home. On holidays, Mom would post pictures of crowded family dinners that I was never in, always captioned, "Family all together except my busy girl who's always working." Beneath the post, relatives and friends would comment, "Natalie is amazing." And she would heart every single one, as if she'd been there beside me through every step of the journey. On nights when I was buried in my thesis, I used to imagine my graduation day, the scene where they'd sit in the front row, Dad smiling proudly, Mom wiping tears, Avery holding a sign that read, "My sister did it." I never imagined the reality would be a row of cold, empty seats. Every promise, every quiet hope I used to lull myself with, crumbled the moment the loudspeaker read my name. And looking back from the 16-year-old barista to the 24-year-old graduate, I realized that every step forward had cost me a fracture. Small ones, maybe, but enough that by the time I reached the finish line, there was hardly a whole piece of me left. That night, I sat alone in my tiny Capitol Hill apartment, laptop open, planning to write a short thank you post for my professors on LinkedIn like everyone else. But my fingers hovered over the keyboard, frozen. Part of me wanted to type. I did it, even when no one believed in me. Another part feared that if my parents ever saw it, they'd accuse me of complaining for attention. I closed the laptop instead, staring out the window at the warm glow of the restaurant lights down the street, where groups of graduates were still toasting and laughing. I didn't cry. I just felt empty, as if every ounce of effort over the years had led me to this one moment, where victory meant nothing because there was no one to share it with. When the clock struck midnight, my phone buzzed. My heart clenched. Some foolish part of me still hoped it was Mom or Dad or maybe even a belated apology. But the screen only showed a bank notification. My final tuition payment had been processed successfully. I let out a small laugh, almost a sigh, as I read the words, balance. $0. For the first time in my life, I was debt-free, and yet, I'd never felt more bankrupt inside. I whispered to myself, maybe it's time to start learning again, not for another degree, but to learn how to live without needing anyone's approval. And as that thought settled, I had no idea that just a few days later, a single text from my mother would turn this quiet evening into the beginning of everything, the beginning of the first time in my life I would say no. 3 days after graduation, when my tiny Capitol Hill apartment still carried the faint scent of lavender from the bouquet a classmate had given me, my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a familiar name. Mom. I hesitated for a few seconds before opening it, half hopeful, half wary. The message was short. Need $2,100 for Avery's Sweet 16 DJ, photo booth and the venue in Cherry Creek already booked. No, congratulations, no, sorry we couldn't make it, not even a simple question about how the ceremony went, the one I had waited my whole life for. Just another request, blunt and transactional, as if I were a walking wallet with a pulse. I stared at the screen, reading it over and over again. 3 days. Only 3 days after they hadn't even bothered to show up for the most important moment of my life, and my mother was already asking for money to throw a party for the family's princess. I sat in silence. The wind from the Rockies slipped through the curtain and brushed against my wrist, reminding me I was still here, still feeling. Next to me, my diploma lay framed but not yet hung, and my old student ID sat folded in half beside it. I opened my banking app, my hands trembling slightly. My account showed just over $3,000 savings from months of side jobs and late shifts. I could send it, like every other time. It would only take a few taps. But this time, something inside me broke free and said no. A small no, but it rang through my head like the crack of a bell. I typed slowly, carefully. Sent $1, congrats. Then I hit send. The word delivered appeared, and I exhaled slowly, deeply, as if I'd just set down a weight I'd been carrying for years. Not 5 minutes later, her reply came. Is this a joke? I didn't answer. I turned off notifications, placed the phone face down on the table, and looked around my apartment. The silence was so deep I could hear the soft hum of the refrigerator. It was the first place I had ever rented under my own name, signed with money I'd earned myself. I remembered when Mom had said, "Let me keep a spare key just in case something happens." Back then, I thought, sure, that's safer. But now, the thought made my spine tighten. The idea that even this space might not be truly mine, it chilled me. I called a locksmith. The man, with a gentle Indian accent, said, "I can be there within an hour." When he arrived, his small metal case jingled as he set it on the floor. While he worked on the hinges, I stood by, feeling oddly calm, almost empty, but steady. When he installed the new lock, I signed the receipt and carefully tucked it into a folder as proof. Proof that, for the first time in my life, I had chosen to protect myself from my own family. When the locksmith left, I stood in the middle of my apartment, afternoon sunlight streaming through the window and pooling across the floor. I picked up my phone, opened my mother's last message, and read it one more time. This time, I didn't feel pain, just clarity. All the memories came rushing back. The times I sent money, the times I said, "It's okay, Mom," the times I stayed silent just to avoid another fight. I used to think endurance made me strong. But now I realized endurance isn't strength. It's the way I kept hurting myself, just to be accepted. I typed one final message. "I've changed the locks. Please don't come to my apartment anymore. I need my own space." No greeting, no explanation. Just a boundary for the first time in my life. The phone stayed silent for a while, then rang. I saw her name flash across the screen, but I didn't answer. She called again. And again. By the third call, I blocked the number. A voice inside whispered, "That's enough." I poured myself a cup of tea and sat on the worn-out sofa. In that quiet moment, I thought of Avery, the girl who'd always been sheltered, who'd never felt how cold the world could be. I didn't hate her. I just hated how love in our family had always been rationed, as if there was only enough for one child. When night fell, the city of Denver shimmered under golden lights. I opened the window and took a deep breath. Outside, people were celebrating, maybe even at Cherry Creek, where Mom had said the party would be. And me? I sat there with a new lock, a small apartment, and a peace I'd never known before. I didn't know what the future would bring, but for the first time in my life, I felt safe not because someone was protecting me, but because I had chosen to protect myself. I turned off the lights, glanced around the room, and whispered into the darkness. If silence is considered a crime in this family, then tonight, I'm guilty. What I didn't know was that in just a few hours, that silence would be broken by a knock on the door, firm and deliberate, from someone I never expected. The next morning, I woke up with a strange feeling as if the air inside my apartment had changed. Sunlight filtered through the curtains and reflected off the shiny new lock. I made myself a cup of black coffee, sat on the sofa, and looked at the locksmith's receipt still lying on the table. $165, not a large amount, but to me, it was proof. Proof that I'd done something no one had ever taught me to do, protect myself. Around noon, Mrs. Patel, my downstairs landlord, a woman in her 60s who always smelled faintly of jasmine and spoke in a voice warm as ginger tea, knocked on my door. "Natalie, I saw someone changing your lock yesterday," she said, tilting her head slightly. I smiled, explained that it had been me, and handed her my copy of the lease. "You're the only one listed as the tenant, right?" she asked. I nodded. She smiled back, approvingly. "Then that's right," she said softly. "No one has the right to enter unless you let them. Not family, not friends." I hadn't expected such simple words to sting my eyes with tears. She placed a gentle but steady hand on my shoulder. "When we're young," she said, "we think love means keeping the door open for others. But sometimes, my dear, you have to close it to keep peace inside." When Mrs. Patel left, I stood alone in the apartment. Every sound seemed sharper: the hum of the refrigerator, the passing cars outside, the slow rhythm of my heartbeat. I took out my phone and opened the voice recorder. In Colorado, recording a call from one party is legal, a fact I'd picked up months ago while working briefly at a law firm. I wasn't trying to do anything wrong, I just wanted proof for myself, in case anyone ever said I was making things up. I dialed my mother's number. After 3 rings, her voice came through, dry, familiar. "So, you finally decided to call." I kept my tone steady. "Mom, I just want to make a few things clear." "Clear what?" "You sent me $1, went silent, then changed the locks on your apartment. What's wrong with you?" I swallowed hard. "Nothing's wrong. I just want to live independently. The apartment's in my name, so I changed the locks for safety." She laughed, half mocking, half angry. "Safety from who? Your own family?" "I only kept a spare key in case something happened." I took a deep breath. "Mom, that's exactly the point. I'm not 16 anymore. I need my own space." There was a pause. For a second, I thought she might understand, but then her voice hardened. "You're so ungrateful. We raised you, paid for your education, and now you shut the door on the people who gave you life? Avery would never talk to me like this." My voice came out calm, almost detached. "You're right, because Avery was never taught to endure the way I was. Mom, I need to set boundaries." On the other end, I heard my father's tired sigh as he quietly stepped in. "Let me talk to her." "What do you want, Natalie?" I closed my eyes. 3 things. 1. I will no longer lend or send money to anyone. 2. No one enters my apartment without my permission. 3. From now on, every cost, every decision concerns only me. Silence. Then a long exhale from my father, followed by my mother's trembling voice. "Are you cutting yourself off from the family?" I spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "No. I'm just learning to protect the small piece of peace I have left." She said nothing more. Then the line went dead. The final beep echoed through the room like a drawn-out ending. I placed my phone on the table, stopped the recording, and saved the file as Boundaries, the 17th of May 2025. Part of me ached, but another part felt lighter, almost free. Maybe because, for once, I hadn't needed to over-explain or beg to be understood. That afternoon, I took the locksmith's receipt down to the leasing office to update the records. The young woman at the front desk looked up and smiled. "That's a solid lock. No one can get in without the original key." I nodded, thanked her, and walked out. The sunset painted the Denver streets in gold and rose. I wasn't sure if the city was quieter than usual, or if for the first time I was simply quiet within myself. That evening, while making tea, I turned on my small speaker. Holocene by Bon Iver filled the air, that soft, melancholy voice wrapping around the silence. I glanced at the new lock again, the metal glinting under the kitchen light. In my mind, Mrs. Patel's words replayed. "You have to close the door to keep peace inside." I smiled. She was right. I wrote a few lines in my notebook. No one ever taught me how to love myself, so I'm teaching myself now. And the first lesson is this: saying no doesn't make me cruel. I closed the notebook, placed it beside the locksmith's receipt, and whispered to myself, "From today on, this is my home, not theirs. And no one enters without knocking." End of 4. That night, I was sitting at the kitchen table, my laptop open, ready to type a few notes for a new data analysis project, when I heard it 3 knocks. Firm, measured. Certain? I froze for a moment. It was 9:30 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. The hallway light spilled through the crack under the door, and then came a deep, steady voice. "Denver Police Department, Miss Reed. We're here for a welfare check." My heart clenched. I walked closer and peered through the peephole. 2 officers stood outside, one tall black man, maybe in his 30s, and a younger woman beside him holding a notepad. I drew in a breath, then unlocked the door. The light from inside fell across the badge on his uniform. Carter. "Good evening, ma'am," he said, polite and calm. "We received a call from Mrs. Linda Reed, your mother. She said you've been acting erratically, changing your apartment locks, not answering calls, and that she was worried you might harm yourself." He paused, studying my face carefully. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. My mother, the same woman who hadn't even shown up at my graduation, was now calling the police because she feared I might hurt myself? I folded my arms, forcing my voice to stay even. "Do I look like I'm about to do something reckless, officer?" Carter's mouth twitched into a faint, knowing smile. "We're just following procedure, ma'am. If you're fine, we just need to confirm and be on our way." "I understand. Please, come in." I stepped aside. The kitchen was bright. On the table, a cup of coffee still steamed beside my framed diploma, the one I'd finally mounted that afternoon. Carter walked in slowly, scanning the room. No mess, no pills, no bottles. Just order. He gave a subtle nod to his partner, who stayed by the door. I poured more water into the kettle and asked quietly, "Would you like some coffee? It's fresh." He shook his head, eyes softening. "No need, thank you. Just a few questions. Do you live alone?" "Yes." "Any recent stress, something that's been overwhelming?" I smiled, faintly bitter. "Just a graduation no one came to, and a mother who thinks that means I've lost my mind." He nodded, jotting nothing down, just listening. After a pause, he said, "Would you like me to note in the report that you're completely fine working, stable, no medical or mental health concerns?" "I'd appreciate that." I pointed to the laptop. "See? I'm literally working on a project right now. I have a deadline next week." He scribbled a few lines in his small notebook. The tension in the room began to ease. I thought that was the end of it, but just as he reached for the doorknob, he hesitated, turning back slightly. "Ah, Miss Reed. Your mother mentioned something else. I'm not sure it's relevant, but I should let you know. She said you've been having some financial trouble opening several new credit cards, missing payments. She wanted us to be aware." My mind stalled. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" He glanced back at his notebook and read it verbatim. A few recently opened credit cards, high interest rates, possible missed payments. She said you might be under financial strain. That's all the detail she gave us. I'm in awe. I felt the blood in my veins turn cold. I hadn't opened any new credit cards in months. I used one account always had, and I had never once missed a payment. I stood frozen, listening to the clock tick on the wall, each sound slicing through the silence like a blade. Carter watched me carefully, then asked, "You didn't know about this?" I shook my head slowly. "I haven't opened any new cards." The female officer looked up, eyebrows raised. Carter closed his notebook, his voice softening. "I see. It could be a misunderstanding. But if anything seems off with your financial records, I recommend checking your credit report. Identity theft cases, they happen more often than people realize. Sometimes even family only finds out after the fact." I gave a dry, bitter laugh. "Oh, I think my family knows exactly what's going on." He looked at me a moment longer, then nodded, signaling to his partner. "Miss Reed, I'll note that you're safe, stable, and not at risk. If your mother contacts us again, we'll direct her through official channels." "Thank you," I murmured, walking them to the door. When it closed behind them, the apartment fell back into stillness. I leaned against the wall, heart still pounding. On the table, my coffee had gone cold, though faint steam still curled in the yellow light. I picked up my phone, opened my messages. Her text, "Need $2,100 for Avery's Sweet 16, still sat there, right above the missed calls. And that's when the thought hit me, sharp and certain. If she could call the police just to humiliate me, then using my identity probably wasn't hard for her either. I opened my laptop and typed in the website for my credit report. My hands trembled as I entered my social security number. The blue glow of the screen lit up my face. 2 new credit accounts appeared, one from Capital One, one from Discover, both under Natalie E. Reed. My social security number was correct, but the billing address. 3442 South Logan Street, Littleton. My parents' house. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I stared at the outstanding balance, over $8,000. Then the transaction list appeared, cruel in its clarity. Cherry Creek Events. Glam Studio. Denver DJ Agency. I didn't even have to guess who it was for. Avery. The Sweet 16. I drew in a shaky breath, clicked the Contact Us page, and dialed the Capital One number. "Thank you for calling Capital One," an automated voice chirped. "Please say or enter your account number." I read the digits from the screen, my voice trembling but steady enough. After a few rounds of verification, a woman came on the line. "For security, can you confirm your social security number and date of birth?" I gave both. There was a brief pause, keys clicking in the background. "Thank you, Miss Reed. Give me a moment to pull up your account details." The silence that followed stretched on forever. I stared at my diploma hanging on the wall, then at the new lock glinting under the light. Finally, her voice returned, calm and professional. "Miss Reed, it appears this account was opened last month through an in-person application at our Littleton branch." My stomach twisted. "In person?" "Yes, ma'am. The signature on file matches the driver's license presented." "Would you like me to read the contact phone number associated with the account?" "Please do." "Sure. It's," she began reading, "3038749. I held my breath as she finished. It was my mother's phone number. A chill raced down my spine. "Can you please repeat the name of the person who verified the information at the branch?" I asked, my voice lower now. The representative hesitated, clicking through her screen. "Let me check. It says, verified by a Mrs. Linda Reed, listed as co-applicant." I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. There must be a mistake. I never authorized a co-applicant. "I understand, Miss Reed," she said carefully. "I'll flag this as a potential identity theft case and escalate it to our fraud department. You'll receive a form to complete within 24 hours. When the call ended, I didn't move. I opened another tab, logging in to discover. The second account was identical, opened the same week, with the same address, the same phone number. 3038749. I didn't need to hear the rest. My mind began rewinding, piecing together every fragment I had brushed aside. I remembered being 17, filling out my FAFSA form for college. Mom had said, "Give me your SSN, honey, I'll fill it out for you, you always mess up those forms." I'd trusted her, thinking she just wanted to help. She was also the one who kept the original copies of my birth certificate and social security card, saying, "I'll hold on to them so you don't lose anything important." I remembered how she used to call banks pretending to be me, her voice bright and confident. "Hi, this is Natalie Reed. I just need to update my mailing address." When I'd asked about it, she'd laughed. "I just want to make sure nothing gets lost in the mail." All. During college, whenever there were issues with taxes or financial aid, she'd insist, "Give me your login, I'll take care of it." And I had. I'd handed over everything: school portal, bank logins, even my recovery email. She used to say, "We're family, we help each other." And I believed her. Now, sitting in the stillness of my kitchen, I understood. All those times she helped were really strings, thin, invisible wires she'd wrapped around my neck for years. Not to strangle me, but to make sure I never got too far from her grasp. I opened a drawer and pulled out an old piece of paper, a handwritten list of passwords, account numbers, and security hints I'd given her back in 2018. The paper had yellowed at the edges. My handwriting read, "Keep safe with Mom." I wanted to rip it apart, but my hands trembled, and some small part of me still refused to believe that the woman who gave me life could exploit me like this. I unlocked my phone and scrolled to the recording from our last call, the file labeled Boundaries, the 17th of May 2025. Her voice played clearly through the speaker. I only kept the spare key in case something happened. I stopped the recording. And in that instant, everything clicked into place like a puzzle flipping to its true side. They had kept my key to enter my home, my SSN to open credit lines, my voice to call the bank. I dialed Officer Carter's number, the one who'd visited the night before. When he answered, my voice came out rough but steady. "Officer Carter, I think I just figured out the real reason my mother called the police." There was a brief pause on the other end. "I'm listening, Miss Reed." "I have evidence she used my identity to open 2 credit accounts. I need to know where to start to protect myself." Carter spoke slowly, each word precise. "First, contact both banks directly and request an immediate freeze on the accounts. Then file a report with the FTC. If you need my official statement confirming the welfare check last night, I'll send it to you for your records." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Thank you." After the call, I sat there for a long time, blank and unmoving. The faint scent of cold coffee lingered in the air, mixing with the soft whistle of wind sneaking through the cracks in the window. I opened it slightly, staring out at the city as the lights flickered on one by one. Somewhere out there, I imagined my mother still texting her friends, bragging about the sweet 16 she was planning for Avery. She probably still believed I'd stay quiet, that her good daughter would keep playing her part. But this time, I wasn't the child handing over my social security number so she could help fill out my FAFSA. I was the woman who had just watched her own name being used, her identity stolen, and finally understood that silence makes you complicit. I turned on the printer. One by one, the pages came out: the statements, the timestamps, the addresses, the electronic signatures. I gathered them neatly into a folder. When the printer fell silent, I looked at the final line on the page. Authorized by Linda M. Reed. My throat tightened, but no tears came. Only one thought echoed clearly, sharp as glass. They won't take anything else from me, not my money, not my name, not my freedom. Outside the window, headlights stretched into long streaks of white across the wet Denver streets after a light rain. I stood up, closed the folder, and placed it next to my diploma on the table. 2 documents, one representing everything I had achieved, the other, proof of how my mother had betrayed me. Between them lay the only thing I could still control, the truth. I chose to confront them in person. I picked a small family diner in Highlands Ranch, about a 20-minute drive from their home, far enough that it wouldn't feel like their territory, but close enough that they couldn't use distance as an excuse. The place was the kind of old-fashioned American diner that smelled of grilled meat and burnt coffee. Brown leather booths. Low-hanging lights. A soft hum of country music in the background. I arrived early and ordered an iced tea. My hand rested on the brown leather folder beside me. Inside it, the locksmith's receipt, the printed credit reports, and the email confirmations from the fraud department. On the table, I placed a small folded note. 3 words, written in black ink. No more silence. 15 minutes later, they walked in. My mother led the way, wearing a bright floral dress and sunglasses, even though the sun had long set. My father followed behind her, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes wandering as if pretending not to see me. And Avery, her hair curled perfectly, wearing a UCLA hoodie, from the university she hadn't even been accepted to yet, but liked to flaunt as if it were a certainty. Mom didn't wait for the hostess to seat them. She scanned the room until she spotted me. "Natalie," she said sharply, with that familiar mix of annoyance and superiority. "You really made me drive all the way out here just for dinner?" I didn't answer. I gestured toward the booth. "Sit." When the waiter approached with menus, Mom waved him off. "We're not eating, we're just here to talk." "Even better," I replied softly. The air between us was heavy. From the kitchen came the hiss of a hot skillet, the metallic clink of utensils. I looked straight at her, my voice calm but deliberate. "I found 2 credit cards opened under my social security number. The statements are mailed to your house. I confirmed everything with the banks, the signatures and the phone number are yours." Her expression faltered for just a moment, then she composed herself, wearing that rehearsed calm I'd known all my life. "Oh, that?" she said lightly, as if I'd just mentioned forgetting to pay the water bill. "Sweetheart, I only did that to help you build credit. Young people like you don't know how to manage credit properly. I did it for you." I tilted my head and gave a thin smile. "You opened the cards in my name. And used them to pay for Avery's Sweet 16, the DJ, the Cherry Creek venue, all of it. Right?" She sighed dramatically, then frowned. "Good Lord, Natalie, you're making it sound like I'm some kind of criminal. It was your sister's special day. You're her big sister, you should understand that sometimes the older one has to make sacrifices." I took a deep breath and kept my voice steady. "I've sacrificed enough. At 16, I worked at a coffee shop to send money for Avery's extra lessons. At 18, I took on college debt because Mom used the college fund to buy her prom dress. At 24, Mom used my name to open credit cards. How many sacrifices does it take, Mom?" My father stayed silent, eyes fixed on the table. Avery sighed and muttered, "Here she goes with the drama again. Always acting like the victim." I turned to her. "Do you know the sparkly dress you wore at your party? That dress was paid for with a card in my name." Avery shrugged. "Mom said you agreed. Besides, you've got a job, what's the big deal?" I let out a short, bitter laugh that made the whole table freeze. "Yes, I have a job, but that doesn't make me the family bank." Mom tapped the table, her voice sharp. "Natalie, don't be rude. I don't need you lecturing me. I do everything for Avery, for this family. If I didn't handle things, her party would never happen, and you'd be the one embarrassing her in front of her friends." I stared at her for a long time. "Are you hearing yourself? You talk like my sister's reputation matters more than your integrity. You stole my identity, that's a crime, not handling things." Dad looked up faintly, voice weak. "Sweetheart, your mother went a bit too far. Don't make this into something bigger than it is. We're family." "Family?" I choked on the word. "Family doesn't call the police saying their child will harm themselves just to silence them. Family doesn't use my social security number to shop. Family doesn't turn someone into a debtor to hide a party for another." Avery turned away and started texting. Mom shot her a glare. "You speak as if we're monsters. I fed you, I raised you day by day. Without me, you wouldn't have gone to college, you wouldn't be where you are." I reached into my bag and set the folder down on the table: the locksmith's receipt, the printed credit report, and the bank email with the subject line, "Fraud investigation." "Here," I said, "evidence. You can look at it, you can deny it, but it's all under your name." Silence fell, only the faint whisper of the air conditioner. I looked at each of them: Mom, Dad, Avery. "I'm not doing this to shame you. I'm doing this because I need freedom. And so you understand one thing. I am no longer the family's bank." Mom's face flushed. She reached for the folder, but I pulled it back. "No," I said, "one copy has already been sent to the bank's fraud department. This is just for you to see." She fell quiet. Dad inhaled deeply and murmured, "Natalie, can you forgive Mom this once? We can handle this within the family." I shook my head. I can't forgive what hasn't been acknowledged. Who? Avery stood up first, sneering. "I'm leaving. You two can fight it out. I've got a live stream after the party." She left the table, the sharp scent of her perfume lingering. Dad watched her go, and Mom muttered almost to herself, "You'll regret this. If Avery gets hurt, I'll never forgive you." I stood and looked her in the eye. "I don't need your forgiveness. I just need you to stop." I gathered the folder and left the diner. Outside, the Highlands Ranch sky had deepened to a muted orange, headlights casting ribbons of gold across the wet pavement. I walked out feeling both light and hollow, like someone who had cut away a gangrenous limb. The wind smelled of the rain to come. I knew the storm wasn't over, but at least, for the first time, I had stood up and said, "Enough." That night, Cherry Creek glittered like a summer postcard. The wealthiest part of the city pulsed with people. Restaurants, boutiques, and cafes pressed their warm lights together, lavender and expensive perfume mingled in the air. I sat in my apartment with the window cracked open, distant music drifting up like an echo from a world I no longer belonged to. On my table lay the bank files, the fraud investigation report that had just arrived in my inbox. In the lower right corner of my laptop screen, a notification glowed: "Case escalated. Evidence sufficient for internal legal review." I smiled faintly. I hadn't filed a police report, I'd only sent account statements and identity confirmation. But the bank, unlike family, knew how to listen to proof rather than excuses. My phone buzzed. "Mom." I had planned to ignore it, but a sixth sense told me something was unfolding. I answered. "What did you do, Natalie?" My mother practically screamed. "The bank called. They say the cards are under investigation, payments are blocked. The DJ, the restaurant, even the photo studio have canceled their contracts. My daughter's whole party is falling apart." I was silent for a moment, hearing the commotion behind her. Music, people shouting, the click of high heels on the floor. "I didn't do anything, Mom," I said evenly. "The bank is doing its job. You have to call them right now and say it's a misunderstanding. This is Avery's birthday. Are you trying to ruin it?" I only confirmed that I didn't open the cards. "That's it. They're investigating because they see signs of fraud. I can't do anything more." On the other end, my mother choked up, then begged, "Please don't do this, Natalie. Don't ruin my daughter's party. She's been waiting for this all year." I exhaled softly. "You already ruined it, not me." Then I hung up. Outside, the music from Cherry Creek played on a decadent dance for people who never feared consequences. I sat still and pictured the scene unfolding: a banquet room draped in white, purple neon lights, a photo booth emblazoned with "Avery's Sweet 16, Born to Shine." I could almost see it. Mom in a tailored blazer, flashing polite smiles, Avery twirling in a silver dress, phone raised to live stream, 100 virtual hearts flooding the screen. But minutes later, that glittering world began to crack. As I poured another cup of coffee, my phone rang again, this time from an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Miss Reed? This is Lawrence Stein, legal representative for Capital One in Colorado. I wanted to inform you briefly. The identity theft matter has been escalated to our internal investigations team, and we've coordinated with Denver police to document transactions at the locations where the cards were used." We understand the largest charges were for the DJ and the Cherry Creek venue tonight. I closed my eyes, keeping my voice calm. I understand. I didn't ask for this, but thank you for taking care of it. There's no need to worry, Mr. Stein replied, professional and measured. No one will be arrested without direct evidence, but a report will be filed on site. It's our duty to clarify the origin of the credit cards. Thank you for your cooperation. I hung up and sat still. A part of me wanted to open a live stream to watch it all unfold, but I didn't. I didn't need to see it. I just wanted to sit in the quiet and listen to the sound of justice doing its work. About 30 minutes later, my phone rang again. Avery. I didn't pick up. Seconds later, a text appeared. Are you insane? The police just showed up. Then another. The DJ left, guests are outside, everyone's looking at Mom like she's a criminal. Why would you ruin this for me? I set the phone down on the table, feeling empty. Outside, thunder rolled distantly over the city, the first hint of rain in the air. I poured myself another cup of coffee and watched the golden light from the lamp stretch across the wooden surface. I didn't feel triumph. I felt stillness, the kind of silence I'd waited my whole life to hear. Meanwhile, in Cherry Creek, Avery's Sweet 16 was dissolving into chaos. Two uniformed officers, one of them, unmistakably, Officer Carter, walked calmly into the neon-lit banquet hall. No sirens. No shouting. Just the sound of steady footsteps and the gleam of badges cutting through the flicker of disco lights. A bank representative followed, a folder tucked under his arm. We're here to verify a fraudulent transaction involving a credit card under the name Natalie Reed. Carter announced evenly, his voice carrying through the stunned crowd. This isn't an arrest, we just need to speak with the person who made the payments. The room fell silent. Purple lights shimmered over frozen faces. My mother went pale, her lips trembling. There must be some mistake. The banker opened the folder. The transaction was made using a card opened at our Littleton branch, signed by Mrs. Linda Reed. Can you confirm that, ma'am? Mom stammered. I only helped my daughter. I didn't realize it was against the law. A murmur rippled through the guests. Parents whispered to each other. Someone's phone camera flashed once, then disappeared. Avery stood in the center of the floor, her face red, voice cracking as she screamed. Why did you do this, Natalie? Are you that jealous? You just wanted to ruin my day, didn't you? No one answered. But the photo booth kept running, capturing everything: the image of Avery crying, my mother panicking, the officers calmly taking notes. Within 10 minutes, the party was over. The DJ packed up his equipment, guests slipped out one by one, some avoiding eye contact, others staring openly, caught between curiosity and pity. Avery threw her bouquet onto the floor and stormed off to the dressing room. Linda collapsed into a chair, eyes vacant, while Carter spoke quietly with the venue manager. We're just filing a report tonight, he said. No further action will be taken on site. All information will be forwarded to the bank. Outside, the rain had begun to fall. On the polished wooden floor, muddy shoeprints marked the path where people had hurried out. The once luxurious banquet hall now looked like a silent battlefield. The sign reading Avery's Sweet 16 swayed gently in the draft from the open door. Hours later, a short video clip began circulating on social media, cut from the photo booth footage, uploaded by one of the younger guests. Barely 30 seconds long. Avery screaming, my mother panicking, and the officer's voice, calm and unmistakable. We're investigating a fraudulent credit card under your daughter's name. The clip spread fast, captioned, Sweet 16 turned sour, cops crash Cherry Creek party. By the next morning, when I watched it, it had already reached over 200,000 views. I saw Avery's face twisted in anger, and my mother's eyes, the eyes of someone who had finally lost control of the world she once manipulated with ease. I didn't share it, didn't comment. I just turned off the screen and closed my eyes. I didn't feel joy. There was no triumphant rush. Only the quiet realization that a massive door had just closed behind me, and for the first time, the sound of the lock clicking wasn't something to fear. It was freedom. I made coffee and watched the rain streak down the window pane. Under the dim morning light, I whispered to myself, I don't need revenge, I just need the truth. And the truth, late as it came, had finally found its own way. 3 days after the chaos at Cherry Creek, their world began to unravel, and this time, I didn't have to lift a finger. The bank sent me an email confirming that all fraudulent credit accounts had been frozen. My mother was ordered to repay nearly $8,400 in unauthorized charges, covering the DJ, the photo booth, and the venue deposit. Attached was a copy of the legal department's note. The primary applicant, Mrs. Linda Reed, has acknowledged unauthorized use and agreed to repay. One cold, simple sentence ending years of blurred lines between helping and exploiting. I stared at it, feeling neither happiness nor sadness, only lightness. Light, as though an invisible rope had finally slipped from around my neck. Words spread quickly through Littleton. In suburban America, secrets don't survive longer than 3 days. People whispered about it in cafes, at Sunday church, at the gym. Did you hear about the Reeds? Something with the bank credit card fraud, I think. My mother stopped going out. Avery locked all her social media accounts after the party video hit over 500,000 views and thousands of mocking comments. My father, Mark, received an official reprimand from his company. A former colleague forwarded me the internal email, which read, Mr. Reed is reminded that using company address to receive personal mail, especially sensitive financial documents, is a violation of privacy and compliance policy. I pictured him sitting in that conference room, silent, as his boss read the disciplinary memo aloud, unable to defend himself. Perhaps for the first time, he understood what it felt like to be seen as an accomplice. I didn't reply to any of their messages. Not out of hatred, just exhaustion. I no longer had the energy to hate. I spent the entire week organizing paperwork, tidying my life into folders like case files. I followed the bank's instructions, filled out the affidavit of identity theft, signed and submitted it to the FTC. Then contacted the 3 major credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, to request a credit freeze. Everything happened through a few clicks, a few impersonal calls, and one strange realization. I was reclaiming my own identity, the thing I'd unknowingly handed over for the past 20 years. On the last afternoon of that week, I went to the local police station to sign the official report. Officer Carter greeted me with a faint smile. Miss Reed, he said, I heard the bank managed to recover the funds. Congratulations. It doesn't feel like congratulations, I replied, but thank you. At least now, everything's clear. He nodded, studying me for a moment before speaking again, his voice softer. Have you considered filing a no-contact order? After everything that happened, you have every right to protect yourself. I was silent for a long while, watching sunlight stream through the glass doors, reflecting off the badge on his chest. I've thought about it, I said slowly. But I don't want to spend the rest of my life living in protection mode. I just want to live, really live. Carter's smile deepened, a rare expression for someone who dealt with other people's crises every day. That's the best answer I've heard all week, he said. Still, I can make a note in the report, just to ensure they don't try to contact you again. I'll be fine, I said. I think they'll stay away on their own. After that conversation, I drove home along a breezy road lined with aspen trees, their shadows stretching long across the asphalt. I stopped by a small used bookstore near Capitol Hill, the one with a chalkboard sign out front that read, Healing takes time, but it starts with a choice. I went inside and bought a thick, leather-bound journal. I promised myself it would be for the therapy sessions I just signed up for, not to get over my parents, but to learn how to stop carrying them with me as I moved forward. That evening, I sat on my sofa under the warm glow of a lamp. On the wall above hung my framed diploma beside the locksmith's receipt. I realized then those 2 pieces of paper, though completely different, symbolized the same thing. I did it myself. No one had allowed me to protect myself. No one had granted me freedom. I had opened the door, changed the lock, and chosen peace on my own. The next morning, my inbox held a single unfamiliar email, subject line, Linda M. Reed, request for discussion. I didn't open it. I simply dragged it straight into archive the same way you shelve a chapter you've reread too many times and no longer need to revisit. That afternoon, another notification appeared on my phone. A message from Carter. Case officially closed. No prosecution, but the record is filed. You can rest easy now. Take care of yourself, Reed. I stared at the short line, then smiled and typed back. I'm learning how to do that. Thank you, Carter. Howen? Later that night, I opened my window and let the Denver night wind spill in. The city buzzed as always, but inside me, for the first time, there was quiet. I thought about all the years I'd spent searching for love in places filled with conditions, begging for acceptance from people who never intended to give it. And I finally understood. Forgiveness isn't about letting them back in, it's about walking away without carrying the hate. I brewed a cup of tea, set it by the window, and watched the streetlights shimmer in the reflection. In my head, I wrote the first line of my new journal entry. Day you know. I owe no one no money, no false gratitude, no silence. I closed the journal and leaned back in the chair. Somewhere in this city, I was sure my mother was still trying to explain to the neighbors that it was all just a misunderstanding. But I didn't need to hear it. I'd spent half my life explaining. The other half, I was going to live. And in that silence, I realized freedom isn't cutting every